Good afternoon, JB here, Friday, January 17th, 3:30. Gonna talk really quick about the market. It's gonna be a quick rant. Not much, well, there's a lot to talk about, always a lot to talk about, but gonna keep it pretty quick here. Talk about the S&P, some of the names I'm looking at, go from there. But here we go. Some continuation. Yesterday, some, I guess you would call consolidation after the big move on Wednesday, and then today just some follow through. Yields are down, and the S&P is up 3% on the week. Who would have thought it? 5 sessions in a row after what you would thought was the start of a big correction or a bear market. So funny how things change so quickly, and you take a look too. Everybody was saying, "Wow, this could be a horrible January, horrible start to 2025," and the S&P is up. Let's see, are we up 2% now for the month? Yeah, 2.1%. So pretty remarkable turnaround. Uh, I have to think now we have earnings picking up. So what's the next catalyst? What's the next thing that's going to push markets higher? At least, uh, you know, keep them well bid. Today also, I mean, take a look at Bitcoin. Just seemed like, 3 days ago that was it. Bitcoin here, all those the bears pounding their chest, talking about MicroStrategy, how it's a big Ponzi scheme, and uh, Bitcoin's never going to see 100,000 again. It's gonna pull back 40%, and at one point, at some point, it will again, right? But if this is the pullback in Bitcoin, normally it has a pullback, right? But if this is how shallow that pullback is, it's probably going to go to like 120 before the next pullback. So pretty remarkable stuff. And then we have the inauguration next week. So I'm sure there'll be more talk about deregulation stuff, more talk about the crypto side, the Doge, right? The Department of Government Efficiency, all those things that might spark markets. So that's the overall market. I was looking for a close over that 50-day moving average yesterday and today, and getting that and then some, and then that 600 handle, what looked like key support resistance. That was the big break back in December when Fed Chair Powell and the Fed cut rates, but then spun their talk hawkish. That was the big spot, right? And once that broke, it's been a rough bounce, choppy market for the last 6 weeks. But maybe we get back over that. We can have some consolidation, similar to what we had after the election, and then work our way to 610 on the SPY. And then also of note, it started week, 15% of stocks in the S&P were trading under their 50-day moving average. It's all the way up to 41% now. So almost half the stocks are back over the 50-day moving average just in a blink of an eye. And of course, I mean, the S&P is going to be close over its 50 days. So that uh, you would think then there would be a lot of the stocks in the S&P over there, 50-day moving. All right, so that's overall markets. Also, don't forget, markets closed on Monday. Netflix report earnings Tuesday after the close. I think there's other names: Johnson & Johnson, 3M, Intuitive Surgical. I think there's American Airlines. I have to go and look, but I'll have the list out with the earnings and implied moves for next week. So that's that. All right, so individual names. So Adobe, as I was on my rant this morning, it was gapping. It was 436 before the bell. Hit 435. I almost was going to put my calls in to close out at a limit and hope they got filled. Of course, I didn't. And then it goes 435. And the next thing you know, it melts down to 433. Didn't want to lose some profits there. So I closed some out for, I think it was close to 500%. And then, of course, I held a couple. And at times they were up to 50, they were back to 100. Then they were up 50%. Then they're back up to 100. And then, now it just had this pull here at the end of the day. So nice trade so far this week, and I still have the ones into next week, so I'll continue to hold those. But I keep saying I love this Adobe setup. I wish it would have been nice if it was a gap and go today. Unfortunately, some consolidation. And also, it's only up. It's up 5 days this week, but only up 6%. I don't know why I say only, but in comparative with the rest of the stocks that are bouncing and some of these other names that have really rallied, especially with this pincher setup, I think there's more meat on this bone. So I keep saying that. I think it heads higher next week and some continuation. And if if it finds a bid, I think it trades over 450. Call me crazy. So I was going to look to close some of my calls out for next week. I'll just hold them into next week. That's Adobe. And then as a point of reference, I was talking about this morning. I mean, take a look at URI. It's up $125 plus just over the last 6 sessions, and it was rallying again this morning. It almost hit 780. And I remember looking at those 780 calls like 2 days ago, thinking, "There's no way," and the premiums were insane. So even with the move today, it was very tough to make money on the calls on URI. So that's how a pincher plays out. So hopefully, when we're looking at the chart of Adobe next week, that's kind of what it will look like. And I'm not saying it's going to 480, but Adobe still setting up very nice. All right, so that's Adobe. So then Roku, I was talking about getting some calls to Encompass earnings. They'll report earnings somewhere around February 15th. February 14th is option expiration Friday. So I would assume they're going to report it the following week. If you look at the premiums haven't really baked in earnings before that. I was almost tempted to get some February 14th because they're less expensive. They don't have as much premium built in. Uh, and then go and try and get the February 21st if we start to melt higher. If not, then I'll just go with a smaller position and then I'll add the February 21st so we get closer. So I mean, we got 20 minutes to close. I don't know if I'll do that, but I've had these situations in the past where there's some catalyst or news that hits, especially we have Netflix earnings on Tuesday where, hey, whether it be an M&A rumor, an analyst upgrade or something, because you have all these analysts and companies looking at the sector, especially ahead of Netflix earnings. So half me is like, I don't want to be in a spot where there's some news over the weekend or on Tuesday and I'm kicking myself, right? So that would be some of the thought process there. But if take a look, I mean, it's just chopping around after its pullback last week, and it's hanging around that 50-day moving average, 76.41. It's at 76.49 right now. So pretty remarkable stuff. But my thoughts there. I'm not going to go on a ramble there. Intuitive Surgical, similar. It was hitting 600 in the pre-market. I'm like, wow, the last couple few of my 600 strikes are going to be up quite a bit. I was watching Adobe, didn't have anything on to close them out because I figured if it did break 600, maybe it gets to 605, 610, crazy stuff. And then sure enough, it pulls all the way back under 590. And then it's been melting back for the rest of into the afternoon. It was 596 just before, and my calls are back in the green. But I only have a couple left. Did I think it could surge in the last 20 minutes? It's certainly possible. It's only 1% away, so I'll continue to hold those. But nice, finally a nice. I haven't traded Intuitive Surgical in a while. Nice to get some profits on that one this week. I don't know why I don't have TripAdvisor on my charts, but I was looking to get some more trip calls yesterday, but I held pat. Of course, what does trip do? It goes all the way up to $16. So the last of my Januaries, I sold at 45. I could have sold for $1 today, but what are you going to do? Could have went the other direction. And only a week ago, they were pretty much those calls were pretty much done. So take that with a grain of salt. So I was looking for other strikes, and I'm trying to find decent risk reward. And I think the Marches offer the best opportunity in regards, because I already have the Junes. So the thought process there is the Junes are starting to gain some premium finally. So hopefully those can start to get to a double. I'll lock some of those in, and then I'll do the similar thing with the March when I get up there. But key breaks, right? So it's over that 1557 yesterday, and now you're looking at $16. I think it heads into the 17s in the coming session. So really love TripAdvisor. Joby's doing nothing today, down 2%. I was going back and, if you look at the chart, actually, it doesn't look too bad, all things considered. And 2025 is like a big year in regards to hurdles, right? I mean, to actual going from a company that it's all speculation to being one that might be able to finally show signs of, hey, this is what we can become with approvals, international, Saudi Arabia. They have a lot of different things, and again, they have all these other partnerships and supporters with Toyota, Uber. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to like about Joby. But you take a look at who was it? Someone was Tejans or someone was asking about the analysts, right? So JP Morgan came out and downgraded the stock to sell from neutral and raise their price target from $5 to $6. This is when the stock was 9 whatever a couple of days ago. So it's just funny. You go back and look at the analyst. The analyst downgraded it to sell back in 2022 or 2023 when the stock was at $9. So it did drop, and then it dropped, and it's been in 5 and 4s for most time. Then back in May, they raised their price target or raised it from sell to neutral, and I think that they kept it at a $5 price target. Then in the summer, they raised their price target to 6. And then I got to do all the things, but my point is they had a $5 and $6 price target back in August, and then they changed it again in October to a neutral or sell, and it went on an 80% run from August and a 90% run since October. So here they are again doing the same thing, except the stock is substantially higher than where it was. So it's kind of funny. It's like they're negative the name, and it's just like they're stomping their foot, hoping to spark selling, what have you. Which, I mean, the stock sold off again. Some of the things if you take a look at the hot sectors right now, and quantum, of course, was the hotter sector, but the Archer and the Jobies of the world were hot as well. I mean, the electric vertical takeoff and landing sector as a whole is hot. And I think people are still not fully embracing it or realize the potential. But because of that, the quantum stocks, like someone was saying, it was like 50 or 60% of the move in those names have been retail or more. So when we had that big sell off after Jensen from NVIDIA said that quantum's at least 20 years out, it's like the retailers got margin calls, and then they're in these other hot spaces, which Joby's one of them, and it sold off. Some of it is just a function of that. So I like to look at it like that's a way to rationalize it as opposed to it being, it's selling off or what have you. There is a large short contingent, and I talked about. I'm trying to think who is it that's I forget the name of the short firm. I always forget when I'm ready to talk about, but they had a short piece back in last year saying Joby's. I wouldn't say it, whatever, but they're short it. So there's a high short interest. That could be some of it. But either way, I like Joby. I'm going to continue to be patient. Add some strikes. Still the February as I added. Seems like eons ago, but that was only only 2 weeks ago. So not being patient there. Other names, I keep looking at Caterpillar. I was kicking myself all the way up to 386 this morning, but then it's just been chopping around. So I was actually looking at 385 calls. So I would have had to been very strategic with those. So I'm not going to kick myself for that. I also tried to time UNH for the second time in 2 days, and it's like one of these times that'll pay out, and then one of these times it's going to happen soon, and it'll offset more of those all the times I try and trade those bounces and then some that don't work out, right? So that's two times. UNH has been good to me. So the last 2 days it has not, but one of these days is going to bounce. I'm going to find an inexpensive risk reward option, and that's kind of how I wrap my head around today because I looked at it. I said, wow. I mean, the 530s looked inexpensive on a risk reward basis. Stock sitting at 518, but obviously, it has to go up another 2%, which I thought was possible, but now it's fading here to lows. That's it, folks. 17 minutes to the close. Everybody have a great weekend. It's gonna be cold in the Northeast, so if you're in the Northeast, holy smokes, get out the boots and gloves and the hats and the mittens. Have a great weekend, folks. I'll be back rock and roll.